The morning started like any other on Mining Station Alpha 7. Commander Jake Morrison walked through the metal corridors of the outpost, his boots making soft sounds on the floor plates. The station hummed with the usual sounds of work, mining equipment running deep below, air recyclers moving fresh air through the vents, and the quiet chatter of people going about their daily tasks. Jake stopped at the main viewing window that looked out over the rocky surface of Kepler 442b. Two suns hung in the purple sky, casting long shadows across the mining site. The planet was not pretty, but it had what humans needed, rare metals that were worth more than gold back on Earth. That was why 300 people lived here, far from home, digging into alien rock. "Good morning, Commander," said Dr. Lisa Kane as she walked up beside him. She carried a datapad in her hands like she always did. Lisa was the chief scientist on the station, and she knew more about rocks and dirt than anyone Jake had ever met. "The new mining site is showing good results. We might finish our quota early this month." Jake nodded but did not smile. Something had been bothering him for days now. The long-range sensors kept picking up strange readings from the edge of the solar system. Nothing clear, just odd signals that came and went. His security chief, Sergeant Danny Cooper, said it was probably just space junk or solar flares. But Jake had been a soldier before he became a mining station commander, and his gut told him something was wrong. "That's good news about the quota," Jake said to Lisa. "How are the miners feeling about the extra work?" "You know how miners are," Lisa laughed. "They grumble about everything, but they do the job. Paul Grant has been working his engineering team hard to keep all the equipment running. The new drilling machines are twice as fast as the old ones." Jake had been thinking about the station's defenses lately. Mining Station Alpha 7 was not a military base. It had 20 security guards with basic weapons, some mining explosives for blasting rock, and that was about it. The nearest military ship was 6 days away by hyperspace jump. If trouble came to Kepler 442b, they would be on their own. "Commander Morrison to the communications center," came a voice over the intercom. It was Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, who ran all the radio and computer systems for the station. "We have a priority message from Colonial Command." Jake's stomach tightened. Priority messages usually meant bad news. He walked quickly through the corridors to the communications center, passing workers who nodded and said hello. These people trusted him to keep them safe. Most of them had families back on Earth or the inner colonies. They were here to make money and build better lives for their children. The communications center was a small room filled with screens and radio equipment. Amy Rodriguez sat at the main console, her fingers dancing over the controls. She was young but good at her job. When Jake arrived, she handed him a printed message with a worried look on her face. Jake read the message twice before the words really sank in. The Zephyrian Empire, humanity's most dangerous enemy, had been attacking human settlements along the outer rim. 3 mining stations had gone silent in the past week. No survivors had been found. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "there's more." Deep Space Monitoring picked up a large fleet moving through hyperspace 2 days ago. "The computer analysis says they're heading toward our system." Jake felt cold despite the warm air in the station. The Zephyrians were not like humans. They were tall reptile creatures with scales instead of skin, and claws instead of fingernails. More importantly, they believed that all other species should serve them or die. They had been at war with humanity for 10 years, and they did not take prisoners. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 18 hours, maybe 20, Amy replied. "The fleet is big, Commander. At least 12 heavy warships." Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. 12 warships against a mining station with 20 guards and some mining equipment. It should have been hopeless. But Jake Morrison had not lived through 15 years as a soldier by giving up when things looked bad. "Get me Sergeant Cooper right now," Jake told Amy. "And send a coded message to all department heads. I want them in conference room A in 30 minutes. Tell them to clear their schedules for the rest of the day." As Amy began sending the messages, Jake walked to his office to think. He looked at the pictures on his desk, photos of the station crew at various celebrations, images of successful mining operations, and a picture of Earth that reminded everyone what they were working for. These people were not soldiers, but they were humans, and humans had a long history of doing impossible things when they had no other choice. 20 minutes later, Jake stood in conference room A, waiting for his department heads to arrive. Through the room's small window, he could see miners going about their work outside. not knowing that their lives were about to change forever. Some of them were laughing at jokes, others were focused on their tasks. All of them looked normal and peaceful. Sergeant Danny Cooper was the first to arrive. He was a short, stocky man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his years as a soldier. Behind him came Dr. Lisa Kane, still carrying her datapad. Then Chief Engineer Paul Grant walked in, his clothes dirty from working on the mining equipment. Dr. Susan Walsh, the station's doctor, came next, followed by the supervisors from different departments. "Close the door," Jake told Cooper. "What I'm about to tell you stays in this room until I say otherwise." The room became very quiet. Everyone could tell from Jake's voice that something serious was happening. These people had worked together for 2 years and they trusted each other like family. "A Zephyrian battle fleet is coming here," Jake said without any introduction. "They'll arrive in less than 20 hours. The nearest help is 6 days away. We're on our own." The silence that followed was complete. Jake could hear the air recycling system humming in the walls. He could see the shock on everyone's faces as they understood what this meant. "How many ships?" asked Paul Grant. "At least 12 heavy cruisers, maybe more," Jake replied. "What are our orders from Colonial Command?" Dr. Walsh asked. Jake looked around the room at these good people who had never expected to face a war. "Our orders are to survive and protect the station if possible. But I'm going to be honest with you. Colonial Command expects us to lose. They expect the Zephyrians to take this station and everyone in it." "So what do we do?" Cooper asked. His hand was already moving toward his sidearm, an old habit from his military days. Jake stood up straighter. "We do what humans do best. We refuse to lose." The silence in Conference Room A stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Jake could see different emotions crossing the faces around the table. Fear was there, but so was anger. These people had worked hard to build something on this distant world, and now aliens wanted to take it away from them. Dr. Lisa Kane was the first to speak. "Commander, I need to ask the obvious question. What chance do we actually have against 12 warships? If we fight them the way they expect us to fight, we have no chance at all," Jake replied. "But they're not expecting us to fight smart." Paul Grant leaned back in his chair and ran his hands through his gray hair. "So let me understand this correctly. We have 20 security guards with basic weapons, some mining explosives, and whatever we can build in the next 18 hours. They have enough firepower to turn this entire planet into glass." "That's right," Jake said. "But they also have something we don't have." Everyone waited for him to continue. "They have overconfidence," Dr. Kane said suddenly. "They think we're just scared miners who will surrender without a fight." Jake pointed at her. "Exactly. They've been fighting human military units for 10 years. Professional soldiers with proper weapons and training. They've never fought a group of civilians who have nothing left to lose." Sergeant Cooper shifted in his chair. "Commander, I understand what you're saying, but we need to be realistic. My 20 guards are good people, but they're not Marines. Most of them signed up for security work because it was quiet and safe." "That's true," Jake agreed. "But look around this room. Lisa knows every rock and mineral on this planet. Paul can build or fix anything with moving parts. Susan can keep people alive under the worst conditions. And you, Danny, you've been training those guards for 2 years. They're better than you think." Dr. Susan Walsh spoke up for the first time. "What exactly are you proposing we do?" Jake stood up and walked to the room's small window. Outside, he could see the mining operation continuing as normal. Giant machines dug into the ground while workers guided them with practiced skill. "We turn this entire station into a weapon. We use everything we have. The mining equipment, the explosives, the processing plants, even the life support systems. The Zephyrians won't just land and knock on our door," Cooper pointed out. "They'll probably bomb us from space first." "No, they won't," Jake said with certainty. "They want the mineral deposits intact. Intelligence reports say they need the same rare metals we're mining here. They'll send ground troops to capture the facility, not destroy it." Paul Grant's expression changed as he began to understand. "The mining charges. We have enough explosives stored here to carve new canyons in the landscape. The atmospheric processing systems," Dr. Walsh added, her medical mind already working through possibilities. "They regulate air quality and temperature throughout the station. With some modifications, the mineral refineries," Lisa continued, excitement building in her voice. "Those magnetic containment fields are designed to handle materials at extreme temperatures and pressures." Jake smiled for the first time since receiving the priority message. "Now you're thinking like humans." We have 18 hours to turn a peaceful mining station into the worst nightmare those aliens have ever seen. Cooper stood up and began pacing. All right, I can work with this. My people know the station layout better than anyone. We can set up defensive positions and ambush points throughout the facility. I want every civilian who can hold a tool organized into work crews, Jake said. These people know how to operate dangerous machinery in hostile environments. That's exactly what we need right now. Paul Grant was already making notes on his data pad. I can relocate the mining charges to strategic points around the perimeter. If we place them correctly, we can channel the aliens into kill zones or collapse entire sections of the station on top of them. What about the main reactor? Lisa asked. It's the heart of all our power systems. It stays online, Jake decided. We'll need power for everything we're planning. But Paul, I want you to install manual overrides on all critical systems. If things go badly, I don't want the aliens to be able to use our own equipment against us. Dr. Walsh was thinking like a doctor, but also like a defender. The medical supplies include some compounds that are harmless to humans, but might cause problems for alien respiratory systems. I can prepare aerosol dispersal systems throughout the station. Do it, Jake approved. What else can we use from the medical bay? The surgical equipment can cut through most materials, Susan replied. The miners already know how to use cutting tools. It's not much different. Cooper had stopped pacing and was now looking thoughtful. Commander, what if they try to surround the entire station? We can't defend every entrance at once. We don't defend every entrance, Jake said. We let them in exactly where we want them to go, then we make them regret it. Lisa was studying her geological data on her pad. I can map out the underground tunnel systems we've created for mining. We could move through the station without using the main corridors at all. Perfect, Jake said. We need to think like miners, not like soldiers. We know this place better than they ever will. We know which supports are critical and which ones can be removed. We know where the dangerous chemicals are stored and how to weaponize industrial equipment. Paul Grant looked up from his notes. The atmospheric processors can be modified to produce extreme temperatures in specific areas. The aliens might have environmental suits, but those suits have limits. How long will all of this take? Jake asked. If everyone works together, we can have basic defenses ready in 12 hours, Paul replied. The more complex modifications will take longer. Then we work in shifts, Jake decided. Some people prepare defenses while others rest. When the aliens arrive, I want everyone alert and ready. Cooper was already thinking tactically. We should evacuate all non-essential personnel to the deepest parts of the mining tunnels. The civilians who aren't fighting can still help by maintaining equipment and providing support. No, Jake said firmly. Everyone fights. Everyone contributes. The moment we start thinking of ourselves as soldiers and civilians, we lose the advantage of being a community. Dr. Kane looked around the room at her colleagues and friends. You realize what you're asking us to do, don't you, Jake? You're asking 300 miners and support staff to hold off a military fleet. Jake met her eyes steadily. I'm asking 300 humans to defend their home against creatures who think we're weak. I'm asking people who chose to live on the edge of known space to show the galaxy what that choice really means. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different. It felt determined. So what's the plan? Cooper asked. The next 16 hours passed like a blur of constant activity. Every person on mining station Alpha 7 worked with a purpose they had never felt before. The usual daily routines were forgotten as miners became builders of deadly traps and engineers transformed peaceful equipment into weapons of war. Jake Morrison stood in what used to be the main communications center, now converted into a command post. Screens showed the positions of work crews throughout the station, and radio chatter filled the air as people reported their progress. Through the reinforced window, he could see the glow of welding torches as teams sealed off corridors and created new pathways through the facility. Commander, Amy Rodriguez called from her position at the sensor array. Long-range scanners are picking up hyperspace distortions. The alien fleet is getting close. Jake felt his stomach tighten, but his voice remained steady. How long do we have? 2 hours, maybe 3 at most, Amy replied. Sergeant Cooper appeared at Jake's shoulder, his uniform dirty from crawling through maintenance tunnels. All defensive positions are manned and ready. The mining charges are placed exactly where Paul wanted them. We've got surprises waiting in every major corridor. What about the civilian evacuation? Jake asked. There is no civilian evacuation, Cooper said with a grim smile. Every person on this station has volunteered to fight. The miners are treating this like the biggest and most dangerous job they've ever taken on. Jake nodded. He had expected as much. These people had chosen to live on the frontier, far from the safety of Earth and the inner colonies. They were not the type to run when things got dangerous. Dr. Lisa Kane emerged from a maintenance hatch, her clothes covered in rock dust and her hands dirty from handling mining equipment. "The geological modifications are complete," she reported. "We've weakened key support structures throughout the facility. When we trigger the charges, whole sections will collapse in a controlled manner." "And the underground tunnels?" Jake asked. "Ready for use," Lisa confirmed. "We can move through the entire station without using the main corridors. The aliens will be walking through a maze while we move freely beneath their feet." Paul Grant's voice came over the intercom system. "Commander, the atmospheric processors are online and ready. I can flood any section of the station with superheated gas or freezing coolant within 30 seconds of your order." "Excellent work, Paul," Jake replied. "What about the power systems?" "All critical systems have manual overrides," Paul's voice continued. "If we lose the main reactor, we have backup power cells that will keep essential equipment running for hours." Dr. Susan Walsh appeared in the command center, carrying a medical bag and wearing a determined expression. "The aerosol dispensers are installed throughout the station. The compounds I've prepared should cause severe respiratory distress in most alien species without harming humans." Jake looked around at his people. 18 hours ago, they had been ordinary civilians going about their daily work. Now they looked like a military unit preparing for battle, but they were something more than soldiers. They were a community defending their home. "Amy, open a channel to all stations," Jake ordered. The communications officer's fingers danced over her controls. "All stations are receiving, Commander." Jake picked up the microphone and took a deep breath. "Attention all personnel. This is Commander Morrison. In less than 2 hours, the alien fleet will arrive. I want everyone to remember why we're here. We came to this planet to build something better for ourselves and our families. We came here because we believed in the future of humanity among the stars." He paused, looking out at the mining facility where people continued to work even as alien warships approached. "These aliens think they can take what we've built. They think we're weak because we're not soldiers. They're about to learn that there's a big difference between not being soldiers and not being fighters." Throughout the station, people stopped their work to listen to their commander's words. "We have advantages they don't expect," Jake continued. "We know every inch of this facility. We know how every machine works and how to make it do things it was never designed to do. Most importantly, we know that we're fighting for our home, while they're just following orders." Amy Rodriguez was monitoring the long-range sensors while Jake spoke. Her eyes widened as new information appeared on her screen. "Commander," she said quietly, "the alien fleet is dropping out of hyperspace." Jake's heart began beating faster, but his voice remained calm. "People of Alpha 7, the time for preparation is over. Take your positions and remember your training. Fight smart, fight together, and show these aliens what humans can do when we refuse to give up." The alien fleet appeared on the main screen, like deadly stars against the darkness of space. 12 massive warships, each one larger than the entire mining station. The lead ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the others. These were not patrol vessels or scouts. This was a full invasion force. In the command center of the lead alien warship, Admiral Vextar studied the human facility through his view screen. The reptilian commander had led dozens of successful attacks on human settlements. This one looked no different from the others, a small outpost with minimal defenses and no military support. "Deploy the first assault wave," Admiral Vextar ordered his subordinate. 3 battalions should be sufficient to secure such a primitive facility. "Yes, Admiral," Commander Zarkesh replied. "Shall we begin with orbital bombardment to soften their defenses?" "No," Vextar said dismissively. "Our intelligence indicates valuable mineral deposits. The High Command wants the facility captured intact. These soft creatures will surrender once they see our forces landing." On the planet's surface, Jake watched the first wave of alien dropships detach from the fleet and begin their descent through the atmosphere. The ships were sleek and deadly-looking, designed to deliver troops quickly and efficiently to a landing zone. "Here they come," Jake announced over the station intercom. "Remember, nobody fires until they're exactly where we want them. Let them think we're helpless and hiding." The alien dropships landed in the main courtyard of the mining facility, exactly where Jake had hoped they would. Ramps dropped from the ships and alien soldiers began pouring out. They were tall reptilian creatures in powered armor, moving with the confidence of predators who had never met serious resistance from humans. Battalion Commander Korthak led his troops toward the main facility building. His sensors showed no defensive positions, no weapons emplacements, no signs of organized resistance. The humans were probably cowering in their shelters waiting to surrender. "Secure the main facility," Korthak ordered his soldiers. "Watch for fleeing civilians, but expect no real opposition." The alien soldiers entered the building through the main entrance, their weapons ready but not expecting trouble. The corridors were empty and quiet, lit only by emergency lighting that cast everything in an eerie red glow. That was when Jake Morrison smiled and pressed the first button on his control panel. The lights went out completely. Complete darkness filled the corridors of Mining Station Alpha 7. The alien soldiers stopped moving, their night vision equipment struggling to adjust to the sudden change. In the silence, Battalion Commander Korthak could hear his own breathing inside his helmet and the quiet hum of his armor systems. "Report," Korthak commanded through his communication system. "Sir, all power appears to be cut to this section," came a reply from one of his squad leaders. "Emergency lighting systems are not functioning." "Use portable illumination," Korthak ordered. "These humans are trying to slow us down with primitive tactics." As the alien soldiers activated their helmet lights, Jake Morrison watched from hidden cameras that ran on independent power supplies. The aliens were exactly where he wanted them, spread out in the main corridor, bunched together, and completely unaware of what was coming. "Now," Jake whispered into his communication unit. The first mining charge exploded not to kill the aliens but to separate them. The blast brought down a section of ceiling between the front and rear groups of soldiers. Rock and twisted metal created a barrier that divided the alien force into smaller isolated groups. "What was that?" Korthak shouted as dust and debris filled the air around him. Before anyone could answer, the second phase began. Dr. Susan Walsh activated her aerosol system, and invisible compounds began flowing through the air vents. The chemicals were harmless to humans but caused severe burning in reptilian respiratory systems. "Sir," gasped one of the alien soldiers, "something is wrong with the air in this place." "Environmental suits to full seal," Korthak ordered, but it was too late for some of his troops. Several aliens were already removing their helmets, clawing at their throats as the burning sensation overwhelmed them. That was when the real attack began. Sergeant Cooper and his security teams opened fire from hidden positions. Their weapons were not military grade, but in the confined space of the corridors they were devastating. The aliens found themselves under attack from multiple directions, unable to determine where the shots were coming from. "Return fire," Korthak commanded, but his soldiers could only shoot at muzzle flashes and shadows. The humans were using the station's layout to their advantage, firing from positions the aliens could not even see. In the deeper parts of the station, the civilian work crews were putting their knowledge to deadly use. Miners who had spent years cutting through solid rock used their equipment to slice through alien armor as easily as cutting butter. The mining tools that had carved tunnels through stone made quick work of the alien soldiers' protective gear. Paul Grant was in the engineering section, watching his modified atmospheric processors do exactly what he had designed them to do. "Jake, Section C is now at -40 degrees, he reported over the communication system. "The aliens in that area are having trouble moving." "Excellent," Jake replied from his command position. "What about Section D?" "Section D is now at 200 degrees, Paul said with satisfaction. "Their environmental suits can handle the planet's atmosphere, but they were not designed for industrial extremes." The alien soldiers found themselves fighting in conditions that changed from moment to moment. One corridor would be freezing cold, making their movements slow and clumsy. The next would be filled with superheated air that overwhelmed their suits' cooling systems. Meanwhile, the humans moved freely through maintenance tunnels that the aliens did not even know existed. Dr. Lisa Kane was using her geological knowledge to devastating effect. She had mapped every weak point in the facility's structure, and now she was bringing down sections of the building in carefully planned collapses. Each explosion was precisely calculated to trap alien soldiers while leaving escape routes open for the human defenders. "Korthak to command ship," the alien battalion commander called desperately. "We are under heavy attack. These humans have turned their facility into a death trap." On the command ship high above, Admiral Vextar received the transmission with growing anger and confusion. "What do you mean, death trap? They are miners, not soldiers. Sir, they are fighting like nothing we have ever encountered, Korthak replied. They know every inch of this place, and they have weaponized everything from their air systems to their mining equipment. Vextar's scaled brow furrowed in frustration. In 10 years of fighting humans, he had never encountered resistance like this. Military units fought with discipline and tactics, but they followed predictable patterns. These civilians were fighting with a creativity and desperation that made no sense to his military mind. Deploy the second wave, Vextar ordered. Reinforce your position and complete the mission. Sir, Commander Zarkesh said carefully, perhaps we should reconsider orbital bombardment. We are losing significant numbers of troops to these humans. The High Command wants this facility intact, Vextar snapped. Deploy heavier weapons with the second wave. These primitive creatures cannot stand against superior firepower. Back in the station, Jake received reports from all sections of the facility. The first alien assault had been broken up and scattered, but at a cost. Several of his people had been wounded, and they were running low on ammunition for their improvised weapons. Commander, Amy Rodriguez called from her sensor station. More dropships are launching from the alien fleet. This group looks bigger than the first one. Jake studied the tactical display that Lisa had created using mining sensors. The second wave was indeed larger, and this time the aliens were bringing heavy weapons and combat engineers. They had learned from their mistakes. Paul, are the main charges ready? Jake asked. Primed and waiting for your command, Paul's voice came back. But Jake, if we use those charges, we will bring down most of the facility. There will be no going back. Jake looked around the command center at the faces of his people. They were tired, dirty, and some were bandaged from minor injuries. But their eyes still held the determination that had brought them to this distant world in the first place. Amy, open a channel to the alien fleet, Jake ordered. Channel open. Commander. Jake picked up the microphone and spoke clearly. Attention alien vessels. This is Commander Jake Morrison of Mining Station Alpha 7. You came here expecting to find easy prey. You were wrong. High above, Admiral Vextar listened to the human's words with growing rage. We are not your prey, Jake continued. We are not even your equals. We are something you have never encountered before. Humans with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Insolent creature, Vextar hissed. Jake's voice remained steady and cold. You can still leave. Take your ships and go find someone else to bully. This is your only warning. The communication channel went silent. Then Vextar's reply came through, filled with reptilian fury. You will surrender now or we will turn your pathetic outpost into glass. Jake smiled grimly and looked at Paul Grant. Execute Foundation protocol. Paul's hand hovered over the detonation control. Are you sure about this, Jake? Do it. The explosion shook the entire planet. The explosion that Paul Grant triggered was not random destruction. Every charge had been placed with the precision that only miners and engineers could achieve. The blast brought down 3 levels of the facility directly onto the alien forces in the lower sections. Tons of reinforced concrete and twisted metal crashed down on the second assault wave before they could even begin their attack. On his command ship, Admiral Vextar watched his tactical display with growing horror. In the space of 30 seconds, he had lost contact with over half of his ground forces. The humans had destroyed their own facility to eliminate his troops. Admiral, his tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic. We show massive casualties in the landing zone. The entire structure has collapsed on our forces. Vextar stared at the display, trying to understand what kind of creatures would destroy their own home rather than surrender it. In his long military career, he had conquered dozens of worlds and fought many different species. None of them had ever shown such ruthless determination. Sir, Commander Zarkesh said quietly, perhaps we should withdraw and report to High Command that the facility was unsuitable for capture. For the first time in his career, Admiral Vextar felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. These humans were not fighting like any enemy he had ever faced. They were willing to sacrifice everything to deny victory to their attackers. No, Vextar said finally, his pride overcoming his growing unease. Prepare the third assault wave. Use everything we have. But while the aliens had been focused on the ground battle, Dr. Lisa Kane and Chief Engineer Paul Grant had been working on something that would change everything. Deep in the remaining sections of the mining facility, they had built something that should have been impossible with their limited resources. Jake, Lisa called over the communication system. "The magnetic accelerator is ready for testing." In the ruins of what had once been the command center, Jake Morrison looked at the readings on Lisa's improvised control system. What his people had built was insane, brilliant, and completely impossible by any normal engineering standards. They had taken the magnetic containment systems from the mineral processors, combined them with the power output of the station's reactor, and created something that had never been attempted outside of military research facilities. "What exactly are we shooting at them?" Sergeant Cooper asked as he joined Jake at the control panel. Paul Grant's voice came over the intercom, tired but proud. "About half a ton of processed titanium steel, accelerated to roughly 10% of light speed. In simple terms," Dr. Kane added, "we built a cannon that fires metal so fast it hits like a nuclear bomb." Jake looked up through the damaged ceiling at the alien fleet hanging in orbit above them. The ships looked untouchable up there, safe from anything a mining station could do to them. They were wrong about that too. "All personnel take cover," Jake announced over the station-wide communication system. "We are about to knock on their front door." The improvised mass driver fired with a sound like thunder. The projectile streaked up through the planet's atmosphere in a column of superheated plasma, moving so fast that the alien sensors barely had time to detect it before impact. The shot hit Admiral Vexitar's flagship dead center. At 10% of light speed, the kinetic energy was beyond imagination. The massive dreadnought did not explode. It simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly by the force of impact. The shockwave from the strike disabled 2 nearby cruisers and sent the rest of the fleet into complete panic. "Again," Jake ordered calmly. The second shot destroyed another cruiser before the remaining alien ships could react. The third shot missed as the surviving vessels desperately tried to gain distance from the planet. But by then it did not matter. The alien fleet was in full retreat, their crews traumatized by weapons they had never imagined possible. But Dr. Kane had been studying more than just the station's defenses. She had discovered something about the planet itself that the original survey had missed. "Jake," she said quietly as she studied her geological readings, "I can give us one more shot, but we will not survive it." Jake looked around at what remained of his command staff. They were in the ruins of their home, surrounded by the wreckage of everything they had built. Many of their friends were gone, and more would not survive the injuries they had sustained, but they were still fighting. "How many ships?" he asked. "All of them," Kane replied. "The planet sits on a deposit of unstable isotopes. If I trigger a cascade reaction with the reactor, it will crack the crust for hundreds of miles. The energy release will be visible from other star systems." Jake understood immediately. The remaining alien ships were still within the gravity well of the solar system, trying to reach safe distance for their hyperspace jump. A planetary explosion would catch them all. "Do it," he said without hesitation. Lisa began the reactor overload sequence that would turn their world into a temporary star. "Jake, I want you to know that working with all of you has been the greatest honor of my life." Jake opened a communication channel to the fleeing alien fleet one last time. "Attention, Zephyrian vessels. This is Commander Jake Morrison. You came here thinking you were hunting prey. You discovered that we are not prey at all. We are humans and we do not surrender what is ours." He paused, watching the countdown on Lisa's control panel. "You will carry word back to your empire about what happened here. Tell them that when humans say no, we mean it absolutely. Tell them that every human outpost, every human world, every human ship will fight exactly like we fought. We would rather die free than live as your slaves." The reactor reached critical overload. The cascade reaction began deep in the planet's core, spreading outward at tremendous speed. The explosion that followed was beyond anything in recorded history, a world killer that sent shockwaves through space itself. The fleeing Zephyrian ships, still struggling to reach hyperspace distance, were caught in the expanding wave of destruction. None of them escaped. 6 days later, the Colonial Defense Force arrived to investigate the loss of contact with Mining Station Alpha 7. They found a system-wide debris field and radiation readings that told the story of an impossible battle. The official report listed all hands as lost with full military honors, but throughout human space, the real story spread. 300 ordinary people, miners, engineers, doctors, and support staff, had faced an overwhelming alien fleet and chosen to fight rather than surrender. They had turned their tools into weapons, their home into a fortress, and their deaths into humanity's greatest victory. The Zephyrian Empire never again attacked a human settlement without massive force and careful planning. More importantly, they never again assumed that any human target would be easy prey. The memorial placed in orbit where Kepler 442b had once existed carried a simple message that every human understood. Here stood humans. Here fell those who underestimated them. Throughout the galaxy, when other species spoke of humanity, they remembered the miners who had refused to yield their home to an empire that thought itself superior. They remembered that humans, when pushed to their limits, would choose mutual destruction over submission. And in the depths of space, human colonies continued to grow and thrive, protected by the knowledge that their enemies now understood exactly what it meant when humans decided to fight.